Just to start off with, what did you think made you a leader in the oil and gas industry in your country?
Well, that's a loaded question. I think if you ask, when we talk about leadership, the way I understand it is you cannot be a leader unless other people think that you're leading. I believe that we have pioneered a business and other people have long since followed into that business. And so when you look back and you see that you now have a followership where you were just two companies at the beginning and now you have so many others that you cannot count, then I think only then can you say that you qualify to take a leadership role.
And how tough is the oil and gas business in Nigeria right now?
Well, it's always been a tough industry. It's never been easy, and it's been made tougher from the beginning by the fact that there were very, very few Nigerian companies participating in this field. When we came in, especially in the trading aspect, there were probably just two companies or three at the most doing it. And so we had to fight with a lot of disbelief from the powers that be, that we could succeed, that we could make it, that we knew what we were talking about, and that made it tougher. But as the years have gone by the mere fact that we've survived 14 years, it's made it a lot easier for us to access new contracts, access new jobs, where we keep reinventing ourselves.
Mr. Tonye, it's Kirby Lachranji here from Axis. Maybe you can just give us a bit of an indication, from a leadership perspective. How did you raise your first capital to start Sahara in its initial form? Obviously the oil industry must be a very capital-intensive industry, and it'll be quite interesting, maybe just for viewers, just to understand a little bit more around how you went about raising the first amounts of capital to get into the oil industry. Okay,
excellent. Now, it's a question we get asked a lot, especially when we first started doing due diligence coming in through banks. And basically, I had worked, I'd started off as an architect, which was my background, started working in Brazil, came back to Nigeria, excuse me, came back to Nigeria and started work with an engineering firm here. I had two other partners as well who had come in from the UK and had come back and had started a clothing shop which they were running in Lagos, buying and selling clothing as trade. One of the earlier businesses that we went into when we started in the oil and gas business was that there were allocations that were being sold to the larger companies, Vitol and Glencore and all of that. And we knew that we had to get our hands on those allocations and pass them on to the larger trading companies. Having done that, we went after, so we gathered all the funding that we could ourselves, and we also found an investor, a man who believed in the vision that we had talked about, and he gave us a little bit of a loan at the time at some exorbitant rate, I must say. But we gathered our resources ourselves, plus that resource, got our hands on allocations, which we then sold to the larger companies, Vitol and Glencore at the time. We did that for the first year and a half, and every amount of money that we were making, the profits that we were making, we put it straight back into the business, at which point we had enough to let us venture ourselves first time into exporting our first product. But that took us about a year and a half, close to 2 years of working hard before we were able to finance our own products.
Now, Mr. Tonye, we'll just move along to some of the issues in Nigeria, in your sector. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the Petroleum Industry Bill and the changes that it promises. How are people facing up to that bill?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. So you get different camps with the different views. First of all, you have the views that come from the IOCs and the multinationals who, at the beginning of the PIB, felt that it was aimed and geared directly against them, and so there was a lot of resistance from them. And then you have the view coming from the indigenous companies who believed that there was a positive spin for them and that they will get more out of the bill if it was passed. And then you have the view coming from government that felt that there was a need to increase access to revenue from the oil companies. Now, from a personal perspective, I believe that it was time, or it is time now, that the petroleum industry is reformed. In a way, I think the old petroleum law that was in existence is outdated and does not reflect the true position of where we should be today as an oil and gas nation. And so I agree that there was a need, or there is a need, for a petroleum industry bill to be instituted. But I also believe that a fine balance has to be struck, because you will still need international companies here. You need greater participation from indigenous companies, and you need a government that understands that you need both parties to work in harmony. And that's where the fine balance has to be struck.
Mr. Tonye, you know, in a very short space of time, I think it's about 14 years, your company has grown, you know, from being really a very entrepreneurial and startup company to a business which is really turning over billions of dollars today. Are you finding that from a leadership perspective, your role is changing all the time? You know, being an entrepreneur in the beginning and today potentially maybe dealing far more with multinationals, and what can you tell us is from a leadership perspective you're doing differently today as to what you did before?
Okay. First of all, the base of entrepreneurism has not changed. That's who we are. We continue that. But one of the things that we found out is that with each time, with each barrier that we break, it opens up a whole new flood of new entrants coming in. And when that happens, we find that we have to reinvent ourselves, we have to do something different, something new, and go into new areas. And so we've opened up very new areas for us. And from a leadership perspective, we find that if we do not have the ability to change, if we don't have the ability to try new things, new frontiers, then we die. Simply put, we'll be dead. And so we're entrepreneurs at heart. We continue doing that. I have no fear going into new countries, going into new regions, looking for new avenues to invest. And so I travel the world. I look for new opportunities everywhere, and that's what I do.
Well, speaking about fear, that has the general view that globally investments in oil are going down. There's a figure we've got here of $24 billion drop in investments in the oil sector. How are you feeling this in Nigeria? Again, from my perspective, when I look at the global investment coming down, I see also that we find that we as African company, as an African-based company, we have an opportunity to get access to places where people would not have gone into before. And so I take the view that many opportunities have opened up because we're a company that is showing that we can deliver, that we can perform, and we can go in. So while the global investment has come down, I haven't seen that happen in Africa. On the other hand, I've seen that investment opportunities have actually improved and increased across board in Africa. It might just be because it's the last frontier. It's still a place where you can make good profit for your investment. So it's not affected dramatically the African continent. I think marginally we've seen an increase in investment coming this way. And how difficult is it, though, to explore and find oil and gas in Nigeria? I mean, I understand from the research I've done with exploration companies, they say that the Nigerian government is one of the top, when it comes to a production sharing agreement, it wants up to 90% of what you've got, which is one of the top figures in Africa.
Okay, and that's true. I think it stems from a historical point that it's been pretty easy to find oil in Nigeria. It's still one of the most prolific regions in the world to drill and discover. And so based on the fact that it's proven to be so easy to discover oil and to develop it, you find on the other hand that you have a government also that wants to generate revenue as quickly as possible from the oil that is drilled and discovered. And I think that's what leads to that. So is it easy to explore for oil here and find it? Yes, it is. Now we have other issues that make certain complications within the oil industry in Nigeria, that over the last couple of years, the Niger Delta issues, the environmental issues that have caused the price of drilling to go up. But at the end of the day, those things were things that were waiting to happen. They've happened, they're being resolved now, and there's a difference. It's just a different footprint that we see now.